We're on the air.
Important business.
Okay. Welcome to the meeting of the Board of School Trustees for Fort Wayne Community Schools for September 13th, 2021. This meeting is open to the public during Indiana's ongoing public health emergency as declared by Governor Holcomb. Masks are required for all visitors. Social distancing is being practiced at the meeting, therefore some members of the public who wish to attend may be excluded. Priority for attendance in person will be given to the members of the media. This meeting is being simulcasted on cable Comcast 54 and Frontier 24. It's being live streamed on our Facebook page and on LTV 2454 Fort Wayne Community Schools YouTube channel. We'll begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And our roll call of members.
Good evening, Steve Corona from the 5th District.
Hello, Raleigh Booker, 4th District.
Jennifer Mathias, 2nd District.
Maria Norman, Member at Large.
Julie Hollingsworth from District 1.
Noah Smith, District 3.
Who are you?
Oh. And I am Ann Duff, Member at Large, and to my left is Angela Filler, Clerk of the Board, and our Superintendent, Dr. Daniel. And we will begin with our awards and recognition. That leads us to Jennifer for the All-State Jazz Ensemble.
It is recommended that the board recognize Liam Campbell Carpenter and Henry Spula for being selected to participate in the Indiana Jazz Educators Association All-State Jazz Ensemble Rhythm for 2020-2021. Students from across Indiana auditioned in May at Butler University to be considered as part of the All-State Jazz Ensemble. These two Northside students will perform at the Indy Jazz Fest on September 18th, 2020, this coming Saturday. And they were already up here. So welcome Liam, Henry, and Principal David West.
And guys, we want to thank you for entertaining us before the meeting. I'm only sorry we couldn't have had you right here down in front and on TV so that everybody else could hear. You're very talented. You're very talented.
All right.
Got on my
Enjoyed
Twitter.
it.
Good.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Cookies with it.
Those are prized.
Okay, at this time, we will show a Teacher of the Year video.
My name is Nikki Foltz. I'm a teacher at Waynedale. I teach 3rd grade. This is my 16th year of teaching, and I've been at FWCS the whole time.
My name is Lisa Clegg. I teach at Northrop High School. This is my 4th year at Northrop, and prior to that, I was a stay-at-home mom for a number of years, but I actually began my teaching career in Albuquerque, New Mexico, teaching middle school.
My name is Tia McFarthing. I teach 7th grade language arts at Tolles New Tech, and this is my 9th year at Tolles New Tech and my 10th year with the district.
I didn't plan on being a teacher. I planned on going to school to be a pediatrician. I didn't know I wanted to work with kids, but I thought I wanted to go in the medical profession.
When I was a little girl, from the time I can remember, I always wanted to be a teacher. I come from a family of teachers. My dad's a professor, my mom's a teacher.
I was not always sure that I wanted to be a teacher. It's something that I kept coming back to.
When I found out I was Teacher of the Year for 2020 for the district, I had no idea what was happening. I really, being newer to the district and a returning teacher, that was not anything that I thought was even possible.
I'm here to represent the district, but there are many other teachers who represent the district well. You know, we are coming in each day ready to go.
When I first started teaching, kids always asked me, well, why do I have to learn this? And it was a big question for me too, where I really wanted to give them purpose.
But for me, teaching is about relationships. How are you going to reach that student who maybe looks like they have it all together, but they don't? How are you going to reach that student who clearly doesn't have it all together and tell you about it?
It is a lot harder than I think a lot of people realize. There's a lot of pressures and a lot of things that we're always thinking about. We're always trying to reach every single student. And so that's a lot of personalities to, to try to figure out, and a lot of challenges to overcome.
You can never put too much time in. You can never work too hard.
It is so good to have a classroom back full of kids, to see people interacting.
And I believe strongly in our district and being able to find, so much strength through diversity, and having be able to have so many different backgrounds and cultures come together.
To make a difference in the life of a child and to really see them progress and grow, there's nothing more important and more valuable in the world.
Kids will amaze and surprise you every day. No day is going to be the same. It's always going to be different, and it's always going to be new and exciting, and it really is a growing experience.
All right, wonderful. And we would like to recognize our teachers in person now. It is recommended that the board recognize the district's 2021-22 Teacher of the Year finalists, and Maria is going to read the related information about them.
Thanks, Ann. Each year, Fort Wayne Community Schools request nominations from principals for the Teacher of the Year recognition. In the spring of 2021, FWCS received 49 applications and narrowed them down to 9 finalists, who were then interviewed by a committee, and 2 were chosen as the 2020-21 FWCS Teacher of the Year winners. We would like to formally recognize the finalists for their hard work and dedication to the students of the district. Emily Hall, Special Area Teacher, Whitney Young Early Learning Center. Felisa Davis Stein, Pre-K Teacher, Bloomingdale Elementary School. Kelly Roberts Seister, 3rd grade teacher, Weiser Park Elementary School. Craig Fales, teacher, Snyder High School. James Graham, automotive instructor, FWCS Career Academy. Karen Stack Tracy, 7th and 8th grade science teacher at Northwood Middle School. Kaylin Speed, 7th grade science teacher at Lane Middle School. All right, that's it.
Is that it?
Congratulations.
Joy, those are hard to find, by the way.
Congratulations.
And it is now recommended that the board recognize the Waynedale Elementary School teacher Nikki Foltz and Toll's Intermediate School teacher Tia McFarthing as the district's 2021-22 Teacher of the Year winners. And Noah will read that related information.
In the spring of 2021, FWCS received 49 submissions from principals for Teacher of the Year honor. After careful consideration, the Teacher of the Committee narrowed down the nominations to 9 amazing finalists. After interviewing each finalist, the committee chose 2 as 2021-2022 Teacher of the Year winners. The 21 and 22 FWCS Elementary Teacher of the Year is Nikki Foltz, a 4th grade teacher at Waynedale Elementary. Ms. Foltz has taught for 15 years and has been with Indian Village for the past 10. According to Waynedale Principal Christy Hoffman, Nikki is an incredible resource for not only our school, but the district and community of Fort Wayne. We're all grateful and blessed to have her at Waynedale Elementary. According to one of Nikki's fellow teachers, Nikki is very humble. She works behind the scenes without wanting any recognition for all that she takes on. Congratulations. Nikki. The 21-22 FWCS Secondary Teacher of the Year is Tia McFarling, 7th grade language arts facilitator at Toll's New Tech Intermediate School. Ms. McFarling has taught for 9 years and has been at Toll's for 8. According to Toll's principal, Jennifer Witzinger, Ms. McFarling seeks to nurture growth in students beyond academics. She helps them find their strengths and assists them in improving areas of weakness. Tia's efforts ensure students' overall wellness is viewed as important as academic success. She forms lasting relationships with her students and has many students return each year to visit and share their success with her. Congratulations, Ms. McFarling.
Hey, before you go, there's a microphone there. If you'd just like to just say anything about what a great profession it is and how, people in our audience, students who are still are thinking about going into teaching, why should they?
Oh, put us on spot.
Yeah, okay. Because you'll get cookies, right?
Like I said in the video, I had not planned on being a teacher. It was something I went to FWCS all growing up, and I started helping out in the resource room at Northrop High School, and that's what really motivated me. I realized I really enjoyed helping children learn, and I became a teacher. And I think I always say it's the most rewarding career you can ever have. It's hard work, but you'll never have a job where you impact so many kids. Like, I was just telling my wife that I had a student that's in high school that contacted her to say, because he goes to her school, and he said, hey, it was Mrs. Fultz's birthday last weekend. Like, I mean, he knew that was my birthday. And there's not very many times where you have an impact where people know who you are, and they're able to come back and say, like, you made a difference in my life. So I think, anybody who's thinking about being a teacher, I think it's definitely a career to think about and, embrace it, because it is life-changing.
Do I really need to say anything else? I think my story is very similar, that I was not sure that I wanted to be a teacher. And then I happened to fall into a job in Chicago at an alternative school, and I loved it. I loved being with the kids. I loved being there every day. And it was that, like, this is my chance to make a difference. And it can be generations deep, right? You help one kid to make that difference, to graduate high school, to, find something they find passionate, and it's a ripple effect. And so I think that's what I love about teaching. And I think, I've been in my school for 9 years now, so I've had everyone's siblings and cousins, and everyone knows who I am. It's always just like, oh, you're Miss Hvac. This is going to be a great year, which is very cool to come into. So I think being a teacher is just, kids are so cool, you guys. They're so amazing. And even in in a pandemic, these kids are awesome, and I am having so much fun. And so glad that we're all back together. But it really is. It's something that stretches you and makes you grow. It makes you really think about who you are and what your purpose is, and how can you change to help other kids. So that's why I want to be a teacher. Okay, and we have one more. It is recommended that the board recognize Northrop High School teacher Lisa Clegg as a top 10 finalist for the State of Indiana Teacher of the Year. Lisa Clegg was chosen as the 2020 Fort Wayne Community Schools Secondary Teacher of the Year. While it is customary for the district to nominate our winners to the State Teacher of the Year process in the year they have won, the state chose not to conduct the search last year due to the pandemic. When submissions opened this year, we were informed that we were able to submit both our 2020 and 2021 winners. Ms. Clegg, an English language learners teacher at Northrop High School, has taught for 9 years and has been at Northrop for 3. We learned in July that both Lisa Clegg and Tia McFarling were chosen as part of the top 25 teachers in the state. In August, we learned that Ms. Clegg had been chosen as part of the top 10 and was asked to conduct an interview with the state. We'd like to recognize Ms. Clegg for this wonderful recognition of her efforts and her students. The 2022 Indiana Teacher of the Year will be announced in October, and the winner will also represent Indiana at the national level. Congratulations, Ms. Clegg, for this wonderful achievement, and you have your cookies. Would you like to share with us?
Same.
I was trying. Well, I think that the other two spoke so wonderfully about teaching in general. And so I'd like to take just a minute to talk about being an ELL teacher, because it is a little different and it is a little bit unique. Being an ELL teacher, so much of what I do goes outside of the classroom. We talk about life skills. We learn how to survive the world that we live in, from basic driving skills to how to read a recipe that's not in the metric system, because we're not a metric system here. We do so many life skills, and a lot of that has to do with relationship building, like I said in the video. My students, the vast majority of them don't live with parents. They live with extended family members. I have a significant number of foster students. And so we're really working on building a community of learners and building strong relationships so they have that feeling of family and that feeling, that foundational feeling of acceptance and love that makes you able to learn. So when they step outside my classroom into the greater world, they feel that connection that most of us get in our homes that we're raised in. So I really try hard to make that in my classroom. And so far, I really feel proud of my students when I get a new student that comes in and they welcome my older students welcome the new students and make them feel part of that community. And that tells me that not only am I trying to make them feel like a community, my students have caught that vision and they're passing it on to each other, and I love that. So that's what's important to me.
We greatly appreciate all of you, so thank you for coming this evening. It's great to have you in person. Okay, we'll move
And now
on.
please leave, because we know you have important, or you just want to go home and relax.
Okay, we will move on to our consent agenda, which includes the approval of our minutes from the August 23rd meeting, the vouchers and payroll, and our personnel report. Is there a motion on the floor to approve the consent agenda?
Move approval, Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you. And is there anything on the personnel report that you'd like to talk about, Dr. Daniel?
I do not have anything this evening.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, then we have no old business. We will move on to new business. First up is Fast Bridge and Horizon assessments. It is recommended that the board approve a 3-year contract for Fast Bridge and Horizon assessments for Illuminate Education of Irvine, California, in the amount of $693,553, I've lost track, 80 cents. Related information, Jennifer, can you continue for us?
Fast Bridge and Horizon will be used for formative assessments, tools, and professional learning to increase data-driven instructional practices and enrich learning for all students. Fast Bridge will be used in grades K through 10. It will highlight foundational skills students must have to enable them to learn Indiana academic standards. Horizon is an SAT-aligned formative assessment that will be used in grades 11 and 12. Illuminate Education is the sole source provider. Indiana law does not require bidding for purchases made from sole source providers. Funding will come from the Education Fund. John Klein, Acting Director of Assessments, is available to answer questions.
Thank you. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And do we have any questions?
John Klein is really here.
I have a question. How are you, John? So in February of this year, we approved from the same company, Illuminate, something called DNA, and that was to be used for formative and common assessments, tools, and professional learning to increase data-driven instructional practices and enrich learning for all students. So how is, and that was for about $554,000, so how is that different than Fast Bridge and Horizon? I think I understand how Horizon is different.
Okay.
Because that's
Is this
SAT.
on? Okay, Ms. Hollingsworth, it's a good
So-
question. It's a good question. DNA, which is the old IO, is specifically aligned and to give us information relative to the Indiana academic standards. We'll be using that at the end of each of the first 3 quarters. Our teachers have, our curriculum coordinators, excuse me, have created customized DNA assessments to go at the end of the quarter to align with our new Curriculum 2.0 scope and sequence. FastBridge, on the other hand, is about the academic skills that kids need, students need, in order to master standards. If I can't pronounce words, if I can't add, subtract, multiply, and divide at certain grade levels, it's impossible for me to learn the standards. So FastBridge, which is given at the beginning of each of the 3 quarters, gives teachers a really good idea about where their students stand relative to those critical skills. But not only teachers, it gives the district a good look at what those skills are district-wide and might help, or probably should help, guide what kind of instructional assistance and supports that we give to teachers.
So it's kind of a pre-test, post-pre, and then a post?
Yeah, there's a pre and a post. They're not really covering the same things, but they are very related because it's you have to have the skills in order to learn the standards.
Right.
So students will be tested 2 times to help the DNA test?
Both the DNA and the FastBridge will be 3 times.
Okay.
Horizon will be just twice because if we did it a 3rd time, according to the schedule, it fall right at the same time the state is giving the SAT to students. So it's just twice.
It's my understanding that the new pathway is for taking the SAT. We changed our whole math curriculum and everything else to align a little bit better, to have 2 years of algebra, because the SAT is taken at the new pathway is the junior year, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so this is then we're still going to be testing our students their senior year?
Yeah, as of right now, that's the plan, because some of those seniors may have to take the SAT again in their senior year. We'll have to wait and see how the state rolls that out completely.
So will we still be giving these tests to the seniors who do not have to take the SAT again?
Actually, we will probably listen very closely to what teachers and principals say. It's not a decision that I would make without their input, and so in order, again, we actually bought the FastBridge and Horizon to meet the needs that teachers said they needed. So we're going to continue to listen to them very closely.
All right. Well, this is I have a daughter who specifically falls into that. She's a junior this year, so that's her first year. So right. I was just wondering if she's taking the SAT, hit benchmark, and then she's still going to be taking tests after that aren't really relevant to her needs. So I was just kind of wondering where we were at with that.
Again, we're going to listen to teachers, parents, kids, and do what we believe is the best for them.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want clarification, because the SAT is a pathway to graduation, but it is also a requirement for all juniors to take it because the state has mandated that.
That is correct. It's no longer a test they have to pass in order to get a diploma, but it is a test they have to take and can count in that pathway towards a diploma.
So, and has the benchmark been set for what they need to get on that?
Yes, it has.
Do we know what that is?
So there are cutoff points.
Or cutoff, I mean?
Yeah. So those are published. We have that in the 3 domains. So actually, Adam, do you have that on the top of your head? Maybe, maybe not.
I can look on my phone.
Yeah, Google that, will you? So yes, there are certain cutoffs. And I'll say this too. SAT, although universities, some are no longer requiring that, it does give you opportunities for scholarships. So even if you're here on that SAT test, if you can get up to here, you can possibly be awarded to save mom and dad some of that tuition costs going post-secondary. So we truly, as we've looked at our whole assessment piece, and again, John, thank you for helping to steer us in this direction. We knew we had to find those assessments that were linked more closely to what was happening in our classroom so teachers could start to look at gaps. We're only at the beginning of this process, but I think if I would use John's quote here that he sent earlier, he said, I can find it now. I have not, in all my years working in assessment, I have not seen another set of assessments that give us the quality of usable data that we now have. Educators at the classroom, building, district levels have data, information that will enable them to make the adjustments necessary to improve instruction. Which students are on track, which are at risk, how much at risk, current reading level, student growth, specific whole class, large group, small group, and individual recommendations to address next instructional steps. Specific and detailed plans to address students at risk areas. That's the beauty of this. It is actually giving us some, I will say, strategic ideas or plans to how do you reduce this gap. So again, what we've done over the summer and what the teachers continue to do in Curriculum 2.0 as they continue to create the scope and sequence, but most importantly, some exemplary units, it still bears down to what is actually happening in the classroom with the students. And if we see gaps, let's get to that work. Let's get to the work to reduce those gaps. Having data in hand, that was, well, first of all, we had to do the scope and sequence. Now the assessments are attached and are continuing to be developed. So it's, in my opinion, it's a matter of time before we start to see reduction of gaps, which is really our goal. So figuring those things out and providing that, should we say, letting our teachers be the experts in their content area, and let's do that. So very pleased with what John in a short time has put together and his guidance in that.
So if a student is not using the SAT as part of their pathway and they don't score well on it their junior year, do they still have to retake it? Or are we only retaking it because it's part of the pathway and we want to get that cut score?
Well,
Or do we know?
I think that might be part of it. The other part is what Dr. Daniel talked about is that gives me an opportunity, if I have been accepted to a college, to get a better chance of having a little bit more financial aid. So we got a couple of different ideas. Yeah.
And if I take it at school, my junior year, I can use that and submit it to colleges?
Yes, correct, because you are actually taking, even though you take it at school, you're taking it through the College Board.
Okay.
And so every junior is required to take the SAT this year, beginning this year?
State requirement.
Did we ever determine who's paying for that? Are we paying for that? Is the state?
The
state
state
of Indiana.
is paying for that.
You mentioned 3 tests for DNA and 3 tests for FastBridge, is that right?
Yes,
So 6 altogether throughout the year?
Yes,
or-
yeah.
Okay, per semester or throughout the year?
throughout the school year.
Okay. And this will go into effect for, if we do this tomorrow, like, for example, we would find this?
Friday, we just finished the first testing window for FastBridge.
Okay. So then the kids in school this year this will impact them, and this will
Yes.
hopefully
Yes.
work to close those gaps. Okay.
Any other questions?
John, good to have you back in the saddle.
Thank you, Mr. Corona. Good to be here.
Do all of our students take ASVAB? Because that is another test for a pathway. When do they take that?
I'm sorry, I don't know that answer, but I'll find out. So,
Adam?
I can answer that.
Did you find the cut score?
I'm going to say it's 530 and 480.
Oh, I think you're right. You saw that. That's right.
Because I know the first guidance when it came
I
out,
can
and
cure
then
it,
they
too.
changed it.
Yeah.
And, you know, you're,
The last time I looked, that
Okay.
sticks in my mind.
That's
yeah,
10.
so as far as ASVAB, I know Southside, we're doing one on Thursday. You know, and so it's something that you set up with that local recruiter, and you can set it up based on what it works for your building. You know, and really it's need-based because the counselors know the kids and they know the ones that they're going to do well on this. Let's give them that other, you know, extra layer or extra safety net
Right.
to help them. So yes.
How many
And-
kids did you get to take it? I'm sorry, Julie.
Go ahead.
I know Thursday at South, we have about 133 that are going to take it. So it's a smaller group, but, you know, we'll take it 1, 2. I think last year we did 3 times. You know, we try to give kids every chance that they can.
And what grade is taking it? Or did I miss that? Or
It's a combination of 11th and 12th grade
Okay.
at Southside. This group's mostly seniors, though, because we want to try to get them ahead right now.
anything else? Right. Adam or for John?
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next is the student furniture at Southside. It is recommended that the board approve the purchase of student furniture for Southside High School from VS America, Inc. of Charlotte, North Carolina for $460,339.36, and Raleigh is going to tell you about that.
This purchase will replace older, outdated student classroom furniture. The new furniture will provide the capability for students to configure their classrooms with ease to meet the needs for collaborating learning groups. The purchase will consist of a mixture of student desks, chairs, stools, and tables. Indiana purchasing law allows for purchases made through competitively bid contracts from approved corporate purchasing entities. This pricing is from Omnia Partners Cooperative and includes an additional 24% price reduction from VS America. Funding will come from the Magnet Grant, and Adam and Rod are here to answer questions.
Thank you, Raleigh. Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
I move for approval.
Second.
Thank you. And do we have any questions for Adam or Rod?
So I'm curious, what do the new student desks and chairs look like? I mean, I certainly know what the old ones look like.
Oh, yeah. You know, the ones that are attached?
Yeah.
To the, yeah. So during the renovation in '95, that's the furniture that we're trying to slowly but surely. So, you know, this is our year 4 of the Magnet Grant, and I focused on an area each year. You know, I redid the media center, and, you know, it's beautiful. I have STEAM labs throughout the school now, and so this is more the classroom where it's just a basic student square desk, has 2 casters on it, so they can tip it and put it right. You know, they can make groups of 2, they can make groups of 4. You know, and there's also, it's not just chairs. You know, I don't know if you guys have seen that there's swivel stools, there, you know, the different ones, because we're trying to meet the needs of the kids in our building. And, you know, sitting them in rows and in those old desks just doesn't work anymore for us. So we got good response from our labs. I've had 13 innovators that were the first year, and they've had training all 4 years so far. But I did those classrooms first as kind of a trial, and we kind of saw what worked and what didn't. So now we're moving to, I have about 32 classrooms left. So this is what this is for, to kind of finish the regular classrooms.
Thank you.
Hey, great.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and we will move on to Nutrition Processing Center Warehouse Expansion Project. Maria?
Cool. It is recommended that the board approve the following, oh, is that the right one?
Yep.
Oh, okay, that's, sorry. The following progressive design build services contract for the Nutrition Processing Center Warehouse Expansion Project. This is going to CME Corporation. Phase 1 of Progressive Design Build Services comes to $16,800. The project will be procured using the Progressive Design Build process under criteria set forth in the Indiana Public Works Design Build Law under Indiana Code 5-30. CME Corporation provided the best value score as defined by the law. The first phase allows the school corporation to collaborate with the design build team to optimize the design scope, quality, schedule, and budget to best meet the needs of the project, and is culminated, sorry. I was like, culminated in a formal report that defines the project and documents all final negotiations and total contract price. The Phase 1 report is anticipated to be presented to the board for its approval at the October 25th meeting. This initiates Phase 2, which is the construction phase. Funding will be from the Nutrition Services Fund and the Elementary and Secondary Emergency Education Relief Esser 3 grant. Project specifications require that the work needs to be complete by July 23rd of 2022, and Director of Facilities Darren Hess will be will be available to answer any questions. And then we have the 3 bids with CME providing the best bid.
Thank you.
Yep.
Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
Move we approve.
Second.
Thank you. And do we have any questions for Darren?
I do. Darren, in looking at the 3 bids from high to low, who didn't get it right, the high bidder or the low bidder?
Well, that's actually a little, it's actually the pre-designed services. Some people go in low, some people go in higher. The overall budget for the project is $1.5 million, so that's the one that we focus on. And those are the 3 companies that all said that they could do it for that amount. This is just the portion that if we would decide not to move forward in October with the Phase 1 report to go into Phase 2, this is the amount of money they would get for the design for the work.
So we'll get what you want with CME.
Yes, we're very excited. We haven't had a chance to work with them on a design build project. This is right up their alley on what they do.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Darren?
Is this the first design build project that we're doing?
We completed Bloomingdale and Harris renovations under the Phase 1 renovation bond, I think in 2015. And we, in 2019, did a progressive design build at Lakeside for the kitchen expansion and renovation. So this is the 4th time we're using this procurement method.
Why this one then?
This one is a difficult project because of the expansion with steel and with COVID and all the delays. This allows us to get started on ordering the steel before we even start foundations and getting that hopefully expedited so that we can start storing some food. Because right now we're struggling trying to keep enough food on hand.
Are getting materials and supplies continuing to be a challenge?
It is more of a challenge every week. And things we wouldn't even thought of a year ago that's starting to creep up now. So yeah, it's a concern.
Like?
Steel, glue, any adhesives, anything with insulation, foam. The supply chain just falls down from there. I mean, delays, they say 6 to 8 weeks, and we're hearing 40 to 42 weeks. Mechanical units, fans, anything with microchips in it, any technology type items.
Have we heard anything further when we have project specifications required to work be complete by X date to use funding? Have we heard anything further of being able to further those deadlines when we don't have if we put in the request for the material and it's just not there yet?
Yeah, so we try to work with the contractors as much as possible. I mean, obviously, if we're trying to specify something and we can't get it done in time, all the manufacturer suppliers, they're using force majeure laws and everything else that's in their contracts that it's hard to hold them accountable. So we just try to really work with them to get as much information approved as fast as possible with shot drawings and submittals and any alternative methods or processes that maybe we haven't thought about. So it's definitely a delicate dance at this point.
Anything else?
I guess I'd say, Darren, keep them coming because you got to get that stuff bought, right?
Yep.
All right, thank you, Darren. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, next up. Why do I have? On my agenda, I have one thing, but in my packet, I have another. Am I wrong? Appointment? Maybe not. Am I ready for the 3D?
No, the appointment of project architect.
Oh, gotcha, okay. I'm just confused, all right. So appointment of project architect engineers for the Esser projects, and that is Julie.
So it's recommended that the board approve the appointment of a project architect engineer for the following projects at various locations. One project is flooring replacements, and that architect engineer is Bonavita Architecture, Inc. Design contract fee estimated is $92,500, and the estimated construction budget is $1,850,000. And then there are HVAC and ventilation replacements and improvements, and that architect and engineer is Primary Engineering. Estimated fee is $1,006,230, and the estimated construction budget is $11,838,000. Indiana law requires that projects over $100,000 make use of a registered architect or a professional engineer for developing plans and specifications. Project architects, engineers need to be appointed now to allow sufficient time for planning and bidding of the project to ensure construction starts during the summer of 2022. These projects will be funded from the elementary and secondary emergency education relief grants, that's Esser 2 and 3. And Director of Facilities, Darren Hess, is still here to answer any questions.
Thank you, Julie. Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And do we have any questions for Darren?
So Darren, this federal money, what did it allow you to expedite that might not have happened had this money been?
It's definitely helped us out, yeah. The HVAC replacement plan, this is definitely going to bolster that. For example, at Anthus, 18 air handlers that were put in the early 80s, that now we can replace those earlier than when we anticipated. So it's good for the students and the staff because of providing better quality air, but also helps us down the line too because we can move some of this stuff forward.
How many schools will this touch?
Nearly all of them. On the flooring one, it's about 750,000 square feet of asbestos flooring that we can remove and replace. And on the HVAC, we are going to be at roughly 30 buildings.
We have 750,000 square foot of asbestos flooring, you mentioned?
We have nearly three-quarters of a million still left, yes. This will allow us to
So that'll
take
be
care
the end
of it.
of it? That's the last of it?
Yes.
Anything else? Okay, thank you, Darren. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and next is our 3DE model. And Noah?
It is recommended the board approve the 3DE Indiana Schools LLC and Junior Achievement Northern Indiana Inc. for a 5-year contract in the amount of $3.86 million over a 5-year basis ranging from $250,000 in the first year to $1,277,818 in the 5th year to reach 5 high schools and progressively grow over that 5-year time frame. 3DE is an instructional model using competency-based case method, including competency development, assessment, and mastery in an interdisciplinary framework, real-world connectivity through turnkey integration of business and community partners to contextualize learning and implementation supports and services for teachers and school leadership teams to the lens of sustained transformation. Funding will come from a combination of Esser 2 dollars and the education fund. Questions will be addressed by Dr. Daniel.
Thank you, Noah. Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any questions?
Can we get a summary of what we're doing here with our partners?
Yes, and actually, our partners are right here in the room, so I don't know, Lena, Yarian, if you would stand up. She can also address some questions. So the key to this phenomenon is we have community partners that we're bringing together to create greater relevancy in our curriculum. So with that said, we're looking at a model that, as we've examined it, still use our current curriculum. We still use all the various programs we have in effect. It's just as, I think the best way to say it, you're now wrapping it around with a case method study. So with that, you have to have community partners that are going to bring that case study method to our classrooms. So we'll not produce that. Rather, we'll work in conjunction with our partner, and our partner will work with our teachers and our principals. And what is a case study, if you will, and I have to be careful, it's just not case study. So the process, case study method process. For instance, there's one principal who said, well, I'd like for Parkview to assist us with our case study method process in the area of health and related sciences. So with that said, that will be their job to create that connection as well as facilitate that method. We then follow specific guidelines, i.e. there is team teaching, there's integrated, we're going to do some interdisciplinary work, which I'm a huge advocate of breaking down the silos of department. Instead, we need to be, and I think we heard it from our teacher of the year. She said, how do you merge things to gain greater understanding and relevancy for students? And as such, that's one of the parameters. Also, another parameter would be you look at specific cohort groups and you create, for instance, and one of our buildings is more interested in a school within a school concept. That's fine, we can do that. Or you can do whole school. But the key is you do have a team of teachers that are working with a cohort in the 4 primary subject areas, which we call math, English, social studies, science. But how do you bring that together and then have some additional courses that also are engaged in this? So, students about every 5 weeks will be given a case method study. So they start to really gain, well, what is it that we're seeing in the real world? And I think when we had this presentation at JA, I think one of the quotes that probably that astounded me, quite frankly. One of our major corporations in our community, the president and CEO said this: I need students, I need work-ready graduates who are critical thinkers, can think outside the box, and understand also these competencies, which we've been talking about for a good long time, i.e. our 6 C's, which are our competencies, which everyone agrees to. That's work ethic, that's how do you stay, again, what's your grit, how do you communicate, how do you critically think. We all agree those are very, very important. And I think almost 90% of our business folks will say, do that first, bring the curriculum along, and now we have a powerful, work-ready individual. So, but the gentleman said this: I need that today. And I'll support this system if you can make this, if you can truly implement this. Because that's the kind of worker I need, and I need them to see real world. So they can, again, as they enter his workplace, they have initiative, they can collaborate with others, they can communicate, they're critical thinkers, problem solvers, and so on and so forth. So, with all that said, we do plan to pilot, and the first stage is a pilot. And the first year is we go about creating this cohort group, the teachers who want to be involved in that cohort group, and then there will be another training over the course of the summer. That's all being laid out. That'll be laid out for us. I also would like to say, and I said this morning to the 2 schools that will be the pilot schools, we need to visit sites to see this in person and see exactly what are the, as we like to say, hurdles, not barriers, not brick walls, but what are the hurdles that we can navigate around and do, and perhaps make this a cleaner transition, but also enable us to see what were the real benefits, because the metrics on this particular system are rather phenomenal. And they're in areas of engagement, student engagement, which is exemplified via chronic attendance rates. You also see With greater engagement, what are the other pieces? Well, we have greater graduation rates. So I am probably most excited, though, about what I would call the persistence rate. That is, what happens with our graduates after they've left Fort Wayne Community Schools. Have they continued down that path of whatever their path may be? It may be immediately going to workforce. It may be apprenticeship. It may be I'm going to a 2-year program. I may be getting some other type of certification. It may be I go to a 4-year program. We don't care, because it's whatever that next step is for that student. Did we prepare them? And are they still in that path? So their data, which I believe was almost 92%, was effective in regards to students continuing down those paths. And I'll tell you, as we heard Dr. Jenner speak last week, students today graduate, move into the post-secondary world, and yet only 25% are graduating with any type of certificate or post-secondary, again, licensing or certificate of some type in 4 years. 4 years. So we know that we have to move that needle. This, to me, because this is true for us, we have to move that needle. And as we start to move this into other buildings, first of all, we have the first 2 schools. They'll pilot it. They'll be doing this for 2 years. We'll have ready information. Is this something we expand, which I hope it surely is, and we have to plan for it that way. Because I want to say, we do it well. We should have the same results as Tampa or better. We should have the same results as Atlanta or better. We should even have, and there's one pilot that's happening right now, their first year is down in Louisville. But the point is, starts with 9th graders first. Then you go 9th and 10th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. With culminating activities to seniors, which could include internships. Doesn't have to, but could include internships. So I go back to our original thought. We've been talking about 6 C's and 4 E's for 3 years. It's now time to put that in action and make the world, make our curriculum come to life. We can do that through this framework. That's what's exciting for me. But I'm now going to turn over to Lena, because without community partnerships, this is null and void. It does not work. So, Lena, you want to talk a little bit about why you brought this to my attention?
Yeah, well, and I loved what your teacher said. One, they need to make it purposeful. And when the students are engaged, then the teachers are more satisfied. The teacher retention rate will also blow you away. And teachers only stay when they're happy and satisfied, and they are happy and satisfied when they get to do what they love. So, and then relationships is the other key aspect that one of the educators had mentioned, and kids need connections. They need to have small relationships within the school, and that's what the kind of cohorts working together, they create a small community, but now they also have bigger relationships, bigger connectivity to business people in our community that they can reach out to, and that's their future employer. And so having that connection is amazing. I love the concept of success skills as what the businesses are looking for. If the students can gain those in high school and through the core competencies get to practice them over and over and over again, and then do a deep dive when they're a senior, when they go out into the careers or they go out into higher education, they're going to be prepared either way for more success. And I think that's really the game changer. I think through this program, you're going to raise the whole region's output and success because of an engagement of students early on in this process. So I am thrilled and excited, and I know the businesses are ready to get on board.
You've mentioned that one offline. You have businesses lined up ready to be involved in this. Is that right?
We do, and it was funny because he said, well, tell me which businesses, and we have been very cautious of offering it to a business, because we had one of the largest employers in the region said, I think you're going to have competition the first 2 years of which businesses get to go into those schools. So we wanted to be selective to make sure we're working with the businesses that align best with the strategies of each particular school.
Any other questions?
Just a comment. It's interesting as to the focus of this and what Dr. Daniel talked about with respect to characteristics. I know that State of Indiana is working on a dashboard, performance dashboard, and in fact they've invited Jack Bird and I to flesh out the details, but what they have, and I'll share this with you, are right now 5 core characteristics that we're going to be held responsible for. The first one is civil, financial, and digital literacy. Communication and collaboration, number 2. Hard work, grit, there's the word again, hard work, grit, and resilience. Career and post-secondary credentials and experiences. And then finally, academic mastery and critical thinking. So that's the framework for where the state is headed. And so Jack and I hope to weigh in as to what we think is important to our students and students around the state. But the moons are aligning, the stars are aligning, and this seems to be an important piece of all that.
Yeah, I would just add also, and I just received a correspondence from the Secretary of Ed as well. We have to do something different in our secondary programs. So she's asking for people who sort of think out of the box to come join that discussion. And I think we're being invited because of what we're doing with our community partners, because we cannot do this alone. We've tried that for how many years? We've had great success. I'm going to say we've done, look back at your graduation rates in the 1960s. You're lucky to be over 60, 65, 70%. Today, I think we're 92.3%. Phenomenal work. But, point being, are our students work ready or career ready? Because to me, that's the big question today. And as Darren Hess said a little bit earlier, it's hard to find vendors, it's hard to find supplies, and I'll tell you, it's hard to find teachers. The schools that have implemented these, 98% retention rate. And these were schools that before were less than 60%, I want to say they're 58%. Complete reversal of, instead of I want to get out of that school, I want to stay in that school. Because they see the impact, the overall impact on students. Not just the academic side, but also the success skills side. And I would hope that as I spent Friday afternoon at the steel, the steel workers.
Steel fitters and pipe fitters.
Yes. I spent Friday afternoon with those folks. They are just chomping on the bit to be part of this program, saying we have problems that your students can solve today. We would love to be part of that because they're an industry in high demand, low supply workers, and you can make $60,000, $75,000, and who knows what the limit is when you tend to do your own private business as well. So I'm hearing from Lena, from her staff, as well as the people I'm visiting, this could change the marketplace in Fort Wayne and Northeast Indiana. This could really change it. Because we have to produce those students who are ready to move into the workforce or are going to be successful in their training. And, I think Mr. Smith said it very well as well. It's that middle 50% of our student body, not our upper 25% academic achievers, but it's that middle 50% that for some we call it sort of the silent middle 50%. And the steelworkers said the same thing. We need to connect with those kids. So we need to have something that connects them with this marketplace where they can make a livable wage, which I still believe is so paramount if you want to have, and I'll say this, if you really want to have equity. You got to have economic independence. So let's gear this up, let's make this work for our kids, and you're not going to see results for 5 years. Because this doesn't start this year, it starts next year with actually the first freshman class. So we're going to see those trends, and they have specific metrics at each grade level that we'll carefully examine those outcomes. Did we fall within their range, or did we not? And if we don't, then what do we need to do differently because we're not connecting, somehow we're not implementing the plan. So this is a game changer. And you know, I've been around a bit, and I can tell you, I've been looking for a system, a framework like this that can take us to another level. And I know that Dr. Jenners is going to have an eye on us as well, because she really believes if we can do it here in Fort Wayne, Northeast Indiana, then maybe this is something we need to look at the entire state. So this is really, I mean, I get a little excited about this, but I'll tell you, I haven't seen anything that has this type of framework. Although we have great programs, we have great programs. It's just that we're missing that critical last piece, which is the connection to real world and how we bring that into our classrooms. And as I told the staffs this morning, this is a 5-year plan. This isn't something that we're going to bring in for a day, for 2 days, for 2 years, and it's off the shelf, or it falls off the shelf. We've been trying to do project-based learning for a very long time. It's just we haven't had a system that is consistent throughout the district. And that's the key word. It is consistent. And I'll also say this, if I'm a teacher, I don't have the time to do this research to find that particular project. I need that provided for me and supported with me with resources, and that's why they have a person that stays in our buildings to help with that support of our teachers. And I think that's a game changer too. So they really thought this out. This isn't, I think the results are self-evident, but if we do it, I think we're going to see even better results. I've never seen quite the response from our business leaders that we received. Ann and I attended that particular evening. They were, well, one person was just off the chart, but he was like, I want this today, how can we do this today? But even some of our other leaders, they were cautiously optimistic. And I'm going to say, absolutely, we need to be cautious. We need to follow the protocol. We need to be consistent, and we need to monitor outcomes. And if we're not there, then what are we going to do differently? So that's what excites me about this. It's not just a plan and a program to put in motion. It's outcome driven, and that's what we need. So, go ahead, questions.
I've lost my train of thought. I know that most of us are pretty excited about this. I know I am. And I know that I've seen my kids become more enthusiastic when they can see the relevance of what they're doing, and they can see, well, I'm going to do this in the future, and it's more relevant and current and something that I will pursue and use later on in life rather than just sitting in a classroom being lectured to. And so I understand the importance of working with businesses and things like that. But I think the only way that this program will be successful is if we have teacher buy-in. So I know that you spoke to our teachers today and just wanted to know how that went.
Well, I have not received any emails. But I'll tell you, and I hope everyone is hearing this, we're still in a pandemic and a crisis. And our teachers are working in a crisis, a pandemic mode, so are administrators. And quite frankly, I think they're just trying to, how do I get through the next day? They are struggling to think educationally, forward thinking at this point in time, but that's our job. I think it's very, very important. You bring the teachers with you. They need to share in the experience and the visits. This is not just principals going to visit if we go to Tampa. And the only reason I say Tampa is because I'd like to also see a pre-K program up in Orlando that some people in our community are talking about. But Tampa does have significant results. I see also going to Louisville. I think it's so important to involve your teachers in this process. And quite frankly, some teachers may say, hey, it's not for me. That's okay. Then we find the next person who is willing to, because it's not going to be, I mean, you're retooling, if you will. You're having to relearn, which, again, I hear these teachers, and I just want to hug them, because what I heard was lifelong learning. It is, we are always learning. We are always finding ways to connect with our kids and having them. So I totally agree with you. So that's why this year is so important to pilot it, find the right teachers, find the teachers who are going to be enthusiastic, and also we've had discussion with our building principals. Building principals have to endorse it, embrace it, and they have to lead it. I'll leave it just with this. And we can't just say, well, you're on your own. Make it work. We have to say, here are your resources. How can we help you? What other things can we do to help you if we start to see things maybe go a little awry? And let's get back on track. That's why I'm excited again to have the technical experts that JA will provide us in each of our buildings full time. And they'll also have another person that's monitoring, because they want this to be as successful on a national scale as we want it to be successful on a local scale. So again, because of the resources, because we're not saying, hey, teachers, you know, it's either this or you're out, we'll work with that. And what I also heard from Jack Harris, who is the president of this particular 3DE program, he said he's never, once it begins, it's teacher stay. And he will say that is proven by our records. So I think once teachers start to see this, they'll say, how can I get involved? Can I be the next cohort group? And again, we do not plan this rollout for the other high schools until we've had 2 years of it on these two schools. Which tells me they must be very confident, they being 3DE, to say, hey, do 2 schools, we know it's going to work. And if it doesn't, we know we always have a default, which is basically, which is similar to what we're doing today. I don't think we'll ever go back to where we've been today. I see us moving to another level. And I also think Dr. Jenner is expecting what's really happening with 11th, 12th grade. It needs to have a revision. And fortunately, some of you attended that breakfast or luncheon with the district with the superintendent from District 214, and you heard what he was saying. And I kept on asking myself, and Lena was doing the same thing. What are the parallelisms? What are the connections? And bottom line is rigor, relevance, and readiness, which I'll take that from him. I like that. So, and that's what we've missed, the readiness. We have the relationship piece. We're really moving that way. We need the readiness piece. And that has to be evident in what are the successes of our kids after graduation, not just getting them across the stage with a diploma. It's what happens after. And we need to rethink that. So we have a lot of work in that space, and we need to get to that work. So this is a part of, that's one part of it. This really starts in the pre-K and the starting kindergarten up. So we haven't even started talking about that piece, but it's on the horizon.
I want to ask a question to Lena Yarian. I mean, you run a 5-star business engagement program now at Junior Achievement. When you first saw this program, what was your reaction?
My reaction was, Dr. Daniels is going to love this. You know, to me, I love what we were doing in the schools. I think everything has its place. The in-school programs are important, the capstone programs are important. This 3DE, it just takes it to a whole nother level. And that's what I was talking to some of my peers across the nation that implemented 3DE. And I love BizTown, I love Finance Park, I can see the game changer those are. And those presidents like, oh, you haven't seen anything yet. And so when my peers are telling me that this is the game changer, I get super excited. And you know, it's the deep impact. It's what we want to have. We want kids to be connected to their education. And if we can get that, if we can get them excited, you can do anything. I mean, the kids all have an ability to do something. You just got to get them excited about it.
You brought Pat Morello, formerly from GE, with you. As long as he's here, I'd love to get his impression of this program and where you think it can benefit our school district.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the recognition. My whole being here is a function of 18 years with Junior Achievement on the executive board and a passion for what we do here. Like Lena said, when I saw 3DE for the first time, I raised my hand and said, well, retirement's not working so good for me. I want to come all in. And I am here largely today because I see the future of this, and I see what this can do. From a business perspective, well, if I can get an entire freshman class to understand my business inside and out, see what I'm good at, what I'm not good at, do I walk the walk, do I not walk the walk? Culturally, what does my business look like? If I can get that, then I know that they are going to, when they do come to work for us, they're going to come knowing who we are, they're going to come knowing what we do, and they're going to be there ready with, in their left hand, their competencies, and in their right hand, their critical thinking skills. What Dr. Daniels said about the gentleman that spoke up in that meeting, he rarely goes out. And he was at that meeting, and everything communicates. And what he was saying was, I need people that can solve problems, and I need them right now. And our ability to get our team and our kids to be able to do that is just powerful. And so that's why I'm here. I think the world of this. One last thing as a parent, I mean, Jennifer, you mentioned it, and you mentioned it. I cannot tell you how many times, well, and then I stopped, but how many times I would ask, so how was your day today at school? What'd you learn today? Nothing. Come on, you know. So I started asking open-ended questions, didn't get very much. Can you just imagine the day when you say, hey, how was your day today? What did you learn? Hey, you know what? I actually presented to XYZ company. And you know what? The CEO of XYZ company said, I did a pretty darn good job. And you know what? I want to go to work there because I love to jam on drums, and that's my passion. And I want to go there and sell them one day.
Hopefully they'll be so excited you won't even have to ask.
Right, but I think that's the future this creates. So, thank you, Mr. Corona.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions from a parent's perspective. Honestly, last year, my son worked on like a Black Pines at his middle school, and that's exactly what I was getting. It was going to get to the point that Pat brought out, is he came home talking about that project. No other projects all over the years, but he did do a cross presentation between I think it's called Black Pines Animal. But it was 3 of his different classes, and every day I heard something about that. And they came up with little trifold, which of course that's my business that I do, but we then had a connection, he and I, of something that he was doing in school and something that I do. So when this was presented to us, I got excited because I saw that excitement in my son already, and that year was 7th grade, and could see where this could take him. So my questions regarding this are, it is at our 2 schools. How does a parent get their child into that, into the programs, and will it be selected, or will they know ahead of, like, as my child this year is leading into high school next year, and I say, yes, I want my child into that, will we have a plan in place for these parents to look at this a little bit more and be excited about it like I am?
Yes, and that's part of the beginning of the training process with our administrators. How do you go about this? If it's a school within a school, we've talked to Jack Harris about this. What is the best process to do this? So he'll work with us in that process. We're trying to gear this up so January 1, when scheduling starts to happen, this is on the plate. If you approve this tonight, I know Faye's ready, she's chomping at the bit as well. Okay, how do I start to, because we also have the pathway career thing. How does this feed this? We also have the pipeline. How does this feed this? And I think they all align. It's just, we need to, instead of just saying, students, you're going to take this math, you're going to take this history, it's this pathway. It's this concept of you're connecting to businesses. In one school, it's going to be all freshmen. But in another school, it will be a school within a school. So we're looking at approximately 180 students. So there will have to be some process to students. If you're interested, sign up. I can't give you the details yet because we haven't worked those out. But I'll tell you, as Jack said, when they went, they had the first initial, yes, students signed up. If they had to, they did approach some other students, but it should be all students. Here's the other piece of this. It's not just your best of your best students, top performers. It's all students. So why? Because they want to see the impact on the total demographic group, not just a group, but all students, which I love that. I love that too. So we may have to go out and select students. Hey, notice you didn't sign up, but we really would be interested in doing it. Say our demographics were skewed one way or another. So again, we'll get into that. That's part of the business, the part of what the building principals will be learning and training with. We do actually have some plans, if this goes tonight, with, okay, there will be some in-person training. We do have Jack Harris. We want him to return and speak directly to our teacher groups. Again, if you're one group, it might be 12 teachers in one building, 6 in the other. But we want that presentation in person with the president of the company, so they can really hear it and see if this is are you willing to go this way? If not, that's okay. We'll win you over next year or the third year. It's just a matter of time. But I'll just say it is something we're going to have to learn. We're going to have to go through. And again, I hadn't mentioned it's about all students. It's not just a group. So we want all students represented, all groups.
So the demographics of the school within the school group should mirror the demographics of the rest of the school.
Correct.
So we can compare apples
Correct.
to apples.
That's correct.
I did a little more research, just for the other board members that weren't there. I went to lunch with Lena and Jack and was able to kind of dig in. And one question I asked was, the schools that have started it before, has anybody abandoned the program? And no one had abandoned the program. And in fact, the schools that had started as a pilot had grown their program. So that was very positive feedback. And then the other thing was, the very first school that they started with was a school that was kind of failing at like a 50% and 50% graduation rates, and now they're up over 90%. So I saw that as a huge positive, and that was one of the first schools that had taken it from freshmen all the way to the senior class finally. So that was very positive feedback that I received and was very impressed with.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a comment, I guess. I don't know if this is appropriate, but I am going to support this. One of my concerns are some of the ones you guys shared, and in particular the teacher buy-in, as Dr. Daniel said, and talking to teacher friends, it's tough. And, as in my role as a board member, I just want to say to teachers, we hear you, we understand, but This is something that needs to happen, I think, for me personally. I think that, everything that we've seen has been great, and all signs point to success. The other thing I'll say is, I believe in, Dr. Daniels Linas and Lynna and Junior Achievement Northeast Indiana in particular. I've had a long, strong relationship with them, and I believe that they'll work their tails off. And then finally, I believe that our business community, our community as a whole, is ready to support something like this. Before I got on the board, at times I felt like the district was a bit insular and not maybe as open to different groups or availabilities of partnerships and relationships as they could have been. And under Dr. Daniels, I feel like we're heading in a different direction in that vein. And I feel strongly and hopeful that our business community and our community in general will support this. And there's a lot of variations of that. And what does that support look like? And I think it's going to come to a very high cost to those businesses at times. But the long-term gain for them and for us as a community, I think, can't be understated. So I just want to make that comment.
Thanks, Noah. Any other questions or comments?
I did have one last one, though, and that is for Dr. Daniel or Lena. The 3D support staff that will be in our buildings will be from 3DE. That will be an employee of 3DE who is our support partner. Is that my correct understanding?
Yes, so they will be employed by 3DE, but they'll be vetted by your local principals, and your educators will vet the hiring of that person, and they'll be trained by 3DE, and they'll be located in your buildings. And the one person will be virtual, and that's the third support.
Okay, and they'll be there every day for
every day. Their role is just to support, and it's all about the quality, right, and the consistency of the program implementation. So that's their role.
Because I think that may be something that we've maybe been lacking in the past, is having that daily support for when and I'm just throwing that out there, but that daily support if there's a problem or of such, and having that person be there and have been onboarded by 3DE and helping them through that program, I think that is a tremendous asset to those teachers in our schools. So, and
maybe patting them on the back once in a while doesn't hurt.
Absolutely.
Say thank you and recognize for good work. I mean, there's that kind of emotional support, and someone giving you a high five after something just great happened, because teachers are in the classroom, they're alone. They see those great moments, but no one's over there high-fiving and saying, wow, I saw that happen. So I think that's all really positive.
Great, thank you.
Is the support person, could this person be new to 3DE as well, or do you draw them from the schools that do 3DE?
So I think our goal is probably to find someone from this community that understands our community and then train them on 3DE.
So it's not necessarily a teacher?
It can be an educator. Absolutely. I think having an education background is going to be critical. Not one of your teachers in the classroom. I'm not stealing from that pool.
Yeah, we're going to
Not
have to talk
going
about
there.
So maybe a past administrator or someone of the sort that would have some kind of business management skills as well as educational skills would be a good cross for that. I'm speaking out to the public who's out there listening that there might be positions open for this that would be exciting for somebody to come into, and but management skills also I think would be a good asset to have for this position. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, anything else? Okay, well, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And we will move on to Reimagining Enrichment, Academics, and Community Health, or REACH grant. It is recommended that the board approve the application for acceptance of the Reimagining Enrichment, Academics, and Community Health, or REACH grant from the Indiana Department of Education in the amount of $495,000. The REACH grant will fund school-based year-round after-school programs for Bloomingdale and Arlington Elementary School students in partnership with the Boys and Girls Club of Fort Wayne. This program will have a focus on STEM and STEAM with college and career program priority. This grant is renewable for up to 3 years. The completed REACH grant application is available for public review beginning on September 17th, 2021 at the Grau Administration Center. And Faye Williams-Robbins is available for questions. Is there a motion on the floor for approval?
So motion.
Second.
Thank you. And does anyone have any questions for Faye? So after-school program with Boys and Girls Club, so do they stay after school or would they go to the Boys and Girls Club?
They would stay after school. We currently have a program with Boys and Girls Club where we're utilizing Fairfield. And so it's been a great model. It kind of came out of necessity with COVID and them wanting to service more students. And so when we found out about this grant, we thought, what a great opportunity to kind of expand on that and partner with the Boys and Girls Club. So our students would stay from 3 to 6, an hour of math, an hour of language arts, and then they would have recreation time, much like what they have at Boys and Girls Club. So we're partnering with them on staff, on curriculum, materials, and supplies. I do want to make one notification in the report. We were looking at Arlington and Bloomingdale, and as we looked at those today, late this afternoon, we realized there's projects going on at Arlington, which is going to impact the HVAC. So the school that will replace that is Haley.
Okay, thank you. And I forgot what I was going to ask. I can't remember. Oh, how many days a week? Is it every day?
We're looking at 5 days a week. For the school year, we're looking at 30 weeks. Now, we're not going to start until January because we won't hear, I think it's November, is it, that before we'll hear about whether we have been approved or not. And then in the summer, it's 36 days.
How did you determine which schools to select for the program?
Well, one, we looked at scores and data, and so we wanted to provide the support where it was most needed. But for Haley, we were actually looking for a school where students attend that school who come from what we refer to as detached areas. It's it for any kid in the school, but some of those kids don't have the benefit of Title I, but they live in neighborhoods that if they went to the schools in the neighborhood, they would have benefit of that. And so as we looked at a school on the north end, one of the reasons was to look at Arlington, and then knowing what's happening for Arlington this summer, moved it to Haley, which also has a detached area, very similar population, and how we provide support to students who don't traditionally have that at their school during the day.
I'm so disappointed. My sons went to Arlington last year, and I know a lot of the kids from my neighborhood, which is Southeast, went there, and they definitely need those supports. So how do you guys plan on, like, is this just something that's going to happen for a year? Are you going to expand the program to include other schools?
I think it's very similar to what we're doing with Fairfield. When you talk with Joe Jordan, when we finished that first year Fairfield and we saw some of the results, Joe was like, where can we put this in every elementary school? And so this is a way for us to get started, but it's something that we know our students need, and that additional support, and how can we do it if it doesn't happen at the school. We're also still wanting to partner with places like Renaissance and Ewell Wilson Center and the Wise and places like that, so that students can do what they do when they go to the Boys and Girls Club, is go to another location after school. But we're looking at how we can expand, but we want to start small.
One of the things that I thought of when you mentioned Arlington, besides being excited for the kids in my neighborhood, was knowing that a lot of them would not, parents wouldn't be able to pick them up. So is transportation part of this program?
Yes, transportation. Boys and Girls Club is willing to partner with us, and we're still trying to work out the details around food, but they will have a meal. It's either going to be provided by us or by them. And they are willing to help us with using their own buses to help get kids home.
Okay.
How many kids do you think you can reach with this?
Well, we're looking at one site about 60 and another about 90. The money is kind of limiting in a way. We just did some budgeting today around staffing alone is about half of that. as we think about those folks that are going to be staying after and working with students, and then we have to have a site director and a program director. All of those things are required by the grant.
I want to make sure I understand where these activities are going to occur, at the school or at the Boys and Girls Club facility in
At the
Ontario?
school.
At the schools?
Yeah.
Thank you.
And because of the grant, there'll be no cost to
No cost to
students or
students.
families to participate
Correct.
in this?
Correct.
Okay, anything else?
And then just, so the grant is renewable for up to 3 years.
Yes.
In that 3-year period, you're just going to focus on those 2 schools or within
Unless
that?
other funds open up. And what we're hoping is that there are some other school districts that don't take advantage of this, and that maybe there'll be other funds that we can expand and maybe do some other schools.
Okay,
That's allowable.
that's exciting.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Faye.
Uh-huh.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now, our Chief Financial Officer, Kathy Friend, will present a report that describes the year 2022 budgets for the Education Fund, Operations Fund, and the 3 debt funds, debt service, referendum debt, and pension bond. The public budget hearings will be held on September 27th, and board action is scheduled for these budgets on October 25, 2021. Kathy.
Thank you. President Duff, Superintendent Daniel, and board members will present the 22 budget right now, and this will definitely be less exciting than all of the other things that you've approved tonight. So, fortunately, I should say. Okay, so this is the agenda for this evening's topics. We're going to go through some of the requirements that you have, and then the revenue and expenditures that ultimately the board will approve. This is the budget adoption calendar, and as usual, we will have a public hearing 2 weeks after we do the budget presentation, and there are 3 public hearings, or 3 topics within the public hearings: the budget, the bus replacement plan, and the capital projects plan, and then on October 25th, we will have the adoption of the budget. These are the topics that the board must approve on that last day when we approve the budget. The appropriations, which are the budgets for each one of the funds that you're going to approve, as well as the maximum property tax levy. And also you will approve the bus replacement plan, a 5-year plan, of a 12-year plan that we're required to have, but the state requires a 5-year plan, a 3-year capital projects plan, and goals for expenditure categories. What you do not approve during this process, but I thought it would be important to bring this up, is because we're getting a large amount of money from the federal government for COVID support, I thought I would bring this to everyone's attention, but again, this is not part of the budget that you will be approving. Also, other things that are not included in this budget are other federal funds like Title I, Title II, those are all separate as well. So what the COVID federal funding was not for was current expenditures or to temporarily stabilize our cash balance, as some of the other federal programs were that were provided. For us, it's to go to special programs that are outlined in the grant requirements. And I've listed some of what those are. In ESSER 3 specifically, as far as student learning gaps, we are required to spend 20% of ESSER 3 on student achievement. But we're also spending a large amount of money between all these grants on technology, facilities, and then also the federal government allows us to take some of the cost from the grant and deposit it into our district funds in recognition of the fact that the burden that it puts on our operations to support those grants. These are the dollar amounts for the grants that we've received. The first column represents the amount that FWCS will have to spend, about $156 million. The total amount administered by us is about $158 million. The difference is dollars that we administer on behalf of the non-public schools. You'll see in ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 that the non-public schools were actually given their own grants separately, and we don't administer those. But the $156 million is the important number here. And, you're seeing these facility board recs come in front of you with Darren and Esser projects, that represents almost half of the 156 million. I think we're up to a little over $70 million, and which is great because those are one-time expenditures that don't need to be sustained or anything in the future. All right, now we'll talk about the revenue for the budgets that you're going to approve. And the two main budgets are Education Fund and Operations Fund. The Education Fund gets its revenue from the state, and that comes from a school funding formula, and the Operations Fund gets its funding from the property tax. What we know about these two funds is that in the Education Fund, the state approved a budget on January 1st. It's good for 2 years, so we know the per pupil amount that we'll receive from the state. So we can plan for that. In the long term, what we don't know is what impact enrollment changes will be. So that's one of the things that we have to estimate for future planning. But at least we do know the per pupil amount for 2 years. The Operations Fund, the levy allowed for 2022 is based on a formula. We'll look at that in a little bit. And again, in the long term, there's a factor that we don't know what that will be, but we can make some estimates and consider the impact of the circuit breaker. And we don't know impact of additional legislative changes that could happen, but that could ultimately impact future property tax dollars. This is the total estimated revenue for 2022 and compared to 2021. As you can see, that's about a 5.6% increase in revenue. I'll go through some details on the state tuition support and the property taxes, but basically those are the two largest pieces, and those are going up higher than our normal expectation. So that is good news. One of the things that we have to remember is that the former general fund that we had funded education expenditures as well as operational expenditures. And now that the state has changed that, the state revenue that goes into the education fund, a portion of that needs to be transferred into the operations fund in order to pay for those expenditures. So we're anticipating that transfer in 2022 to be about $10 million. That's lower than what we have been doing. We had been budgeting $15 million, but because of the pension bond neutrality going away and some other things, we aren't going to need to transfer as much. We're well below. The state set what they set as a cap or a limit that they didn't want you to go over 15% of state support. This $10 million is less than 5% of state support. So we have no worries there. So the main components of the tuition support basic grant formula includes foundation and complexity. And foundation is a per pupil amount that's provided the same to every school district in the state. So as you can see for 21-22, that's $5,995, and 22-23, it's $6,235. In addition to that, school districts, all school districts, get some form of complexity funding, which is based on the poverty of the school district. And so for school districts that have low poverty, they will get less than a district with high poverty. And we are one of the higher complexity school districts. I also
noted... what
noted...
our poverty rate is roughly?
It's going to be on the next slide.
Thank you.
Yep. I just wanted to note there the virtual students are only funded at 85%. So for our program that is 100% virtual that we have this year, we have about 300 students in that program. We will receive those dollars at 85%. So this page, it's kind of hard to read, I suppose, from there, but this shows you poverty. The top corner there shows you 3 different ways to look at poverty, actually. The first column shows what our free textbook percentage is. So those are the students that are, they apply for free lunch / free textbooks, but as you all know, all of our students get free lunch, but that also contributes to whether they get free textbooks. And we are at about 69% there. I don't have my glasses on. And the second column is the direct certified amount, which includes students that are on SNAP, TANF, and Medicaid. And also that number includes, we are able to add to that number students that are in the same household as another student that receives benefits. So when we get the file from the Department of Ed, sometimes not all students in a family are included in that file that we get. So we are able to do cross-checking and make sure we capture every child in that household. Also, sometimes names don't always match. Like if a child has 2 last names and one agency hyphenates it and the other one doesn't, then we're going to have a discrepancy. So we're able to add those in too in order to get a direct certified rate that truly depicts what our poverty rate is in our district. So it's from the state, it's a state-generated number, but it's not complete by the time it gets to us. And these are conversations I'm having with people at the state to try to get some consistency there. Other school districts in the state are also having the same conversation. We're working on a study with the Urban Schools Association to try to get to the bottom of this so that we have a consistent method of determining poverty. Because as you can see in the third column, that's the number the state's using right now in our school funding formula, and it's drastically different than the direct certified number. And so that number in that third column is what comes down to the bottom section to then determine ultimately how much money we receive per pupil in complexity. So in the blue column there, that's the amount we get per pupil in complexity, and that number has actually gone up. But because of these discrepancies, our poverty rate looks like it's going down, which doesn't make any sense when you consider what the free textbook rate looks like in the direct certified rate in the middle column there. So it ultimately ends up in that our complexity number has been going down over the years. And fortunately, in this last session, because IUSA had already done a study about the importance of complexity, legislators didn't mess with it. And so we're really lucky, I think, because I think there was confusion by a lot of legislators about the importance of complexity. And so the fact that they kept that in and didn't, in fact, didn't reduce it, they kept it the same, but they didn't reduce it. So we're pleased that is still part of the formula, and we'll continue to have to defend why we think that should be done in a different way.
Kathy,
yeah, go
could
ahead.
you, with the numbers up in the upper left-hand corner, can you tell me the disparity again between column 1 and then the middle column, direct certified? What does that mean?
Okay, the
direct
first
certified?
column is families that apply directly with FWCS and those people may not have decided to apply for state benefits. So you could have a family that isn't on welfare, but they still qualify for free textbooks. And so those people are applying directly with FWCS, and they are eligible based on the documentation they provide us, so that's how they qualify for free textbooks. And in the old days, that was the figure that was used to determine poverty for the complexity index. And then it changed because there were legislators that didn't believe necessarily that those numbers were accurate. So, and frankly, I was for using the direct certified rate, because if it was generated by the state, how could it be wrong, right? I mean, then they couldn't complain about that. But when now you can see that the state, when they're using their base number that doesn't include all the people that were left out or the matches that didn't get made, there's a discrepancy there. And so, so the second column, what happens is the state sends us a file and they say, here's all the students that are on SNAP, TANF. They don't include Medicaid in that calculation. SNAP and TANF are foster children. And then they say, you can also extend benefits to other members of the same household. And so that's how that's how that number gets bigger, is because we determine that there are other students to add. And then, like I said, if there's a name matching thing. But what's interesting is, after we do that and we extend that benefit here, to get our appropriate numbers, there's no return that goes back to the IDOE to tell them, hey, these other people should have been on that list too. It just sort of stops and is used for our information for our community eligibility program. So it's, so basically, as far as the state's concerned, they stop at what they sent us. Whatever they sent us, that's that third column there, if that makes sense. I know it's this is super complicated, but it you know, because we're dependent. This is about $30 million of revenue that we get.
Yeah.
So it makes a difference in how the calculation happens.
And Kathy, where do we get the standards or criteria or benchmarks for who is eligible for free textbooks?
That is just 100% based on family application.
Okay. And so
Yes.
is there criteria that the state or the
Oh,
federal
yes, there
government
is.
sets?
Yes, there is. And I'm sorry, I don't have that with me, but yes, there is criteria.
Okay.
Now, the families that are direct certified, I shouldn't say it's strictly application, because families that are direct certified by the state that are in that file we get, they are automatically get free textbooks. It's people who have not applied for those state benefits who may be eligible for free textbooks, they have to apply in order to get those.
And I'm not so much worried about the application process, but who sets that criteria? Is it the state? Okay, so the state sets the eligibility for free textbooks, and 63% of our families are eligible for free textbooks, but then the state uses 28.6% to figure out our poverty rate?
I think part, you know, when I go back to, did they think that the free textbook rate was accurate or not? They are not checking the, you know, our work when we take those applications, and that was part of the
Argument.
of their argument that we needed a process that had maybe more documentation to it, more oversight, that kind of thing. That's why it switched over to the direct certified.
But to boil down the direct certified and state poverty, and you've said this 5 times probably, I'm sorry, but we have about 60% of our kids, the state says and acknowledge is under poverty levels. But they're only giving us money to not even 30% of our kids. So there's a whole 30% gap of student population, which for us is almost 9,000 kids, roughly. Is that fair? 30,000 kids, 30%, 1/3?
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned to us, Kathy, that nobody seems to be able to accurately explain how the state comes up with the 28.6. It seems to be a mystery.
Well,
many people.
And the more conversations I've been having, I really think what has happened is it's that first file that we get. You know, it's missing members of families, I think, is a big key there. And it's missing, and when they're in, like, one of the things I'd love to know is like how many names don't get a match. And so where do they go off? You know, if somebody's last name is hyphenated in our file, but not in the state's file, then since that match doesn't occur, that student's not getting counted anywhere in anybody's complexity.
But there's no back and forth between us and the state like there is for enrollment.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of back and forth for enrollment.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, they want to make sure that no student's being counted twice and every student is at least counted. So it's kind of curious that there's no check and balance for something else.
That's right. And I think this has only been in effect, you know, since 15-16, this method, because prior to that, it was the free textbooks. So I think now everybody's starting to figure out that maybe this needs to be relooked at. And like I said, my counterparts around the state are also looking at this and concerned. And especially like what Noah was saying, when you see that disparity between that second and third column, it's hard to make sense of it.
Yeah, like Noah said, I mean, clearly our direct certified has been increasing. So it's a real conundrum that the complexity index that the state uses is decreasing. That makes doesn't make sense.
And we do have some legislators that are at the level that work on the budget that are listening to the conversations, and I think have open minds about trying to figure this out too. So this goes to the next slide, we do have about $30 million that we receive from the complexity funding, and it gets used basically for two purposes. One, it helps us fund those areas where we don't get fully funded right now. One is English language learners, which between what we get from the state and what we get from the federal government, we have expenditures of $5 million that are not funded. So fortunately, we have complexity funding that helps support that. Special education, that gap is getting smaller because of increases to this year's budget, so that's a good thing, but there's still a $3 million gap in special ed at the end of the 2 years. If we didn't have to use it for those gaps, we could use that money in the second category there to support other non-foundational expenditures. So if we wanted to add more support in the classroom, or we wanted to add more case managers or counselors or whatever, we would be able to do more of that if we didn't have to spend it on those learning gaps. So I think it's fortunate we have it for that purpose, but I wish we could also get those areas fully funded so that we would have more available to support the regular classroom.
In other conversations we had, I understand we have about 10% of our students are ELL. Does that hold true?
Yeah, that's probably right. Not at the first level, but yeah.
And then about a fourth of our kids, or 25%, are defined as special ed. Or, so that's where those dollars not being available to us really are impactful. Thank you.
So this chart shows you then the history of the foundation per pupil and the complexity per pupil for FWCS. So the complexity would be different for every district, but the foundation would be the same. And then the chart on the right shows you what our numbers have looked like. The green is our complexity, the blue is the foundation, and then the red is our overall number. And I did give this one a happy face. This is the first time, as you can see, in years. Look at those numbers on there that we've been, above 2%. It's great. So for the 4.8% and 3.4% are going to really help us do some good things for our staff this year. Okay, so then you take those per pupil amounts and you multiply them times enrollment in order to get the total funding. So, however, it's not total enrollment, it's the ADM, or average daily membership. But the total enrollment, just so you know where we are as of today, we're up 298 kids as of, compared to last year, which is about a 1% increase. But the funded portion is up about 86 kids, which is about 0.3%. And the reason that the first number is higher is because preschool does not get counted in ADM. So we're not getting any funding for the preschool students. The preschool students that are involved in Title I are funded, of course, with Title I, but in terms of the education fund, we're not getting any preschool funding.
So then it's fair to say we're up, of the 298 kids we're up, 86 were not preschool, everybody else was preschool?
Yes, yes.
So how many of our preschool kids are not funded because they're not Title I?
Oh, that's a good question. That would be Bunch Elementary and Young, Bunch and Young, and I don't have their enrollment figures off the top of my head, but all of the students in those two schools. Pardon me?
None of that is funded by, the On My Way pre-K?
Well, there may be, I don't know, no. Get says no. No.
Do you think, that's 100 kids, 200 kids?
Oh, no, it's more than that. Oh, yeah, you mean at Bunch and Young, you mean?
Bunch and
Oh,
Young.
yeah.
Each one of them averages about under 300, 200, upper 200 enrollment.
So how do we pay for that?
And they are in the morning and in the afternoon. So there's half in the morning and half in the, at both of those schools, right? No. Is that preschool?
No. Whitney Young is full day.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Bunch is full day except for their 3-year-olds.
Okay.
Their 3-year-olds is half day.
And so we don't get funding at all for that?
No.
So we've just decided as a district that that's important, and
We did, yes.
so does that come
Yes.
out of the education fund or the operations
It
fund?
comes out of the education fund. Now, there was a time that when we had the racial balance fund, that we committed that as part of our racial balance plan. And so that's how originally the funding was set up for those two programs. But when racial balance went away and was folded into the operations fund, Then it became, I mean, it's still we still have the same money. It's just divided up differently. But we no longer have the racial balance fund. But that originally was how it was decided that funding would be made available for those two programs. So now it just comes out of the education fund with all of the other expenditures in the education fund. Okay, so the next three items are other tuition support components. The special education fund represents almost $20 million of the revenue budget. And good news here, another happy face, is that all of the exceptionalities in special ed, except for communication, were increased 5% the first year and 10% the second year. That is remarkable. We have not seen, and especially for every category to get looked at, other than the smallest one in communication. So we're very pleased about that. That's why we're going from a funding gap of $6.2 million down to $3 million because of those increases. So hats off to our legislators for that. That was really great. Career and technical education, there was no funding change there, although there was talk about decreasing some categories during the session. It didn't happen, thankfully, but it stayed flat, and then the honors diploma also stayed flat. This is the property tax calculation, and so this is established by the state. Basically, they take your maximum levy from the prior year, multiply it times a growth factor, which is based on 5 years average of non-farm income. And so this one gets a 4.4% increase in 2022. So that's also pretty nice. We get increases on that end, usually better than what we get on the education fund side. But I highlighted that yellow line because it's an exciting year for me that is gone, that the pension bond neutrality is gone. It's been a long time coming. We've had to deduct about $3.5 million a year from our available property tax, and that made it unavailable for anything else in the district. So in 21, it went down to $2.5 million, and in 22, it is gone forever. So that creates, an additional almost $5 million of allowed levy that we can use for the district, and that's one of the main reasons that transfer can be reduced, because that levy neutrality is gone. So I'm really, really happy about that. We still have to deduct, though, the tax cap loss that we anticipate, which we're guessing is about $6.3 million, to get what our total net property taxes are. And the next slide shows you what the history has been of the property tax cap losses. And those really peaked in 2015 and then have sort of leveled out. Because as assessed value goes up in the community, the tax cap loss decreases because people pay a higher percentage or a higher amount when their assessed value goes up, so their 1% is higher than it would have been before their assessed value went up. But the main point to make here is that the loss has been about $83 million since 2009. That's real money that we didn't have available to us to use for transportation or for school bus replacement or for capital projects. And one of the main reasons why we've had to do referendums over the years, because we would have never been able to keep up with our construction needs based on just the dollars that we would have gotten from the operations fund. So next I'll hit the expenditure budget. And again, the two main funds are the education fund and the operations fund, and I've noted those in red and purple so that you can know what I'm talking about when I get to those pages. As far as the expenditure categories are concerned, these are defined by the state so that everyone across the state is being consistent in how they're tracking their expenditures. So academic achievement and student instructional support go into the education fund, while overhead and operational expenses and non-operational expenses go into the operations fund. I will say most non-operational expenses are not in the operations fund, though. They are mostly in debt service and in construction funds, but there are some non-operational expenditures in there. So when you look at our categories of spending, and this data looks old, but it's the most recent that we have, This shows you how we compare to the state average in 18-19. And as you can see, we are better in our percentage spent on student instructional expenditures compared to the state. And then when you exclude the non-operation funds, which I think is really important because that non-operational section is very unique to each school district, depending on where they are in their construction or their debt service and all of that. So I prefer to use the without non-operational in there. You can see 76.7% of our dollars are spent on student instruction compared to the state average of 72.1%. So this sort of translates to this next slide, not perfectly, because keep in mind, this slide includes all expenditures, including all of our federal grants. But this includes just the Education and Operations Fund and shows you that 74% of those total dollars are going to the Education Fund. So the Education Fund is spent on mostly these categories. And in the Education Fund, there's probably there's over 1,500 teachers in the Education Fund. We have in total about 1,800, but some of those are paid for out of grants, but about 1,500 here. And hundreds of classroom assistants, and then of course school administration, magnet programs. So everything that it takes to run an actual school building other than the utilities, that doesn't get included in the Education Fund, that's in the Operations Fund. But most everything else that takes to run a school is in there. So here's the Education Fund budget is 93% people. So all those people that I listed on that other screen are in there. The other category could represent things like curriculum, materials and supplies that we give to the schools, those kind of things. Next is the Operations Fund budget, and these are the main components of that. I've broken it down on this chart in a little more detail. You can see that transportation is about 25% of the Operations Fund, capital projects is about 25%, and then the remainder I've listed out there. The larger components like custodial and utilities, and then all of the staff that are paid for out of the Operations Fund beyond what's in transportation and capital projects. But the wages and fringe there would include like the people that work in the Grio building, and some of the other folks out in the, let's say maintenance and operations, those that are not considered the skilled crafts people that are in capital projects, those people would be in there as well. So within that, I'm going to detail capital projects a little bit, since that's one of the biggest ones. And this is how the capital projects fund breaks down, $16.5 million. The biggest component of that is the construction and a renovation budget there. The yellow one there is general repairs. The next slide is what the state requires us to do. So they require a 3-year plan that doesn't look like what I just showed you, because it's only those items that exceed $10,000 individually. And it's defined by two different categories, projects that are considered capital in nature and capital assets. And each one of those definitions there relates to their definitions. One thing I want to point out on this slide is the fourth bullet there that says construction, repair, replacement, remodeling, or maintenance of school sports facilities. We are limited to spend 2.7% of our Operations Fund property tax revenue. And something exciting that we've included in this 3-year plan is to continue adding turf at our high schools. This adds turf at Wayne in the 2022 budget, South Side in 23, and North Side in 24. The last school would be Snyder. Of course, since this is only a 3-year plan, it's not on here. But in 2025, there would be consideration for what to do at Snyder. So we will still be working on that, but I think that's exciting that we're going to get the Wayne project done while that school's being renovated right now. They also will have in there, there's a softball field also in the plan at Wayne for next year.
We're happy with the football field at Northrop, the turf.
Asking me, are you happy, Kathy? I'm happy, yeah. I mean, you live in Northrop. I went to Northrop, yeah, but that's not why I went for. Yeah, I'm not exactly a football buff, but I understand that they love their football field out there, so, yep.
By the way, are marching band events back this year? ISMA and...
I think so, yeah.
Are they back?
He says yes.
Faye says yes.
Have we put in, because, Northrop traditionally always hosted, I mean, I know a big...
I haven't heard of any change.
I didn't know
No.
if we had put in to host any of those events now.
I don't believe so. Not yet. Okay, so this is what the actual 3-year plan looks like that the state will get. And by the way, the turf, the 2.7% amounts to about $1.7 million. So of that line, about $1.7 million of it goes to sports facilities projects.
Is there a reason capital acquisitions are quite a bit larger in 2022, or?
It's basically a vehicle replacement plan, and so all the capital acquisitions are there on that second line. So it just depends on the timing of when those are going to be replaced.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that does not include like technology or anything like that because it's not over $10,000. So that's just, that would be a if we were going to buy a great big system or something that cost more than $10,000, that would have showed up there.
Is it 10,000 per item or 10,000 per?
Per item, yeah. Okay, and then transportation, this is just some information about our transportation department. And this is the budget for transportation. About 75%, a little more than 75% of this budget goes towards staffing the program, and that includes drivers, bus assistants, their fringe benefits, mechanics, and then the balance is other categories that we need to keep the program running, like insurance, fuel, vehicle maintenance.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask if we saw the reported city rates for gas from Lasses Brothers going forward at $1.89.
Oh, I knew you were going to ask about that tonight.
Can we get that
Is
guy to help
Rod still here?
negotiate that for
Yeah.
us, or do you get?
Well, and keep in mind that there's no tax involved in that too, so that's partly why that number looks so different than what you and I pay at the pump too. But I need to get you information about that, yeah. Okay, and this is the bus replacement plan. This is, we have a 12-year replacement plan is what the state says, but then they require that we submit to them and advertise a 5-year plan. So I've boxed in there the 5-year portion of the part that we'll be advertising and the part that you actually approve, but that's the entire 12-year plan. So we have 299 buses that will be approved over a 12-year period. And note that this year is very small because buses aren't purchased necessarily on a 12th at a time, and we had many years where we really reduced the amount of buses that we bought because of the circuit breaker. When it was climbing so high, and because of pension bond neutrality, we were not buying all the buses in the 12-year plan. So this is to replace buses that would have been purchased 12 years ago that could have been a year when we could have purchased our entire inventory. So that's why that number's low. And so you'll notice then the number goes up as we have the ability in those past years to purchase more. We would sure like to see a more even purchasing arrangement in the future. It might be something that we target where we try to stabilize that to say it's $3-4 million, something like that every year, so that eventually you get on a cycle where it's much more even instead of having these variations. Because what you have to do, understand then next year, the budget would go up automatically $3 million just to cover the bus replacement thing. So, okay. Debt funds, these are the last funds that the board approves, and I haven't talked about those at this point because they are so different than the Education and Operations Fund. So we have two different funds. We have the Debt Service Fund and we have the Referendum Debt Fund. The orange bar and above represents those items included in the regular Debt Service Fund, and The bulk of what's left in that fund is just our annual technology loans that we borrow, and we bring those to the board, CSF loans and STAA loans, and the repayment on that is about $4.5 million a year. At a 1% interest rate, it's been for many years. That could vary, but it's 1%. So we'll continue to have that as part of our debt strategy. And then the blue line represents our referendum debt, and you can see that went up, but that was all by design, because as the regular debt service went down when one bond got paid off, we borrowed in the referendum debt. So with the ultimate goal to keep our tax rate no higher than 0.3028, as we discussed while we were selling the 2020 referendum. So that will, and that budget is about total $30.8 million. So we do have some upcoming debt activity because we'll continue to borrow for the 2020 referendum. But again, it's all designed so that as other debt falls off, new debt comes on, and we still maintain the 0.3028 rate. So in summary, when you look at the Education and Operations Fund, I highlighted in yellow the total of those two funds. That budget is actually going up 7%, and that is, many of you know, that's higher than our typical increase. But we're going to be increasing expenditures to match those revenue increases that we're getting. Debt's going down a little bit, but overall we're looking at a 6% increase in the budgets that the board will approve. These are the key takeaways. As you know, we got new federal funding that's providing us additional supports. Revenue, enrollment is almost 300 higher than last year. Of course, as you know, that's not going to translate into 300 per pupil revenues, but total revenue is up about 300. The new state budget was very beneficial to us. The budget for the Education and Operations Fund increased 7%. Bus replacement plan is on target, and we'll maintain our promised overall rate for the debt funds. So next steps are the public hearing and the adoption of the budgets, and that's it. Any questions?
Thank you, Kathy.
Questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Rosie.
Kathy.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Rosie. As usual, you and your department do a terrific job.
Okay, Dr. Daniel will update us on COVID-19 as it relates to our schools.
Kathy, that was exciting. As a former accounting teacher, I can tell you it's always nice when you see those numbers, though. It's pretty amazing. So, I am not Mary Hess. I will not claim to be Mary Hess. Our Director of Health and Wellness, she's gone for last week and this week for a much-needed vacation. And I can tell you that we'd probably like to do this at least once a month to update you where we are with COVID. So, with that said, okay, is this me? Yes, it is. All right. So, the first slide here will show you that we are basically staying, we look at that one chart to the left, and you're seeing, we think, we hope, we pray that maybe we've reached a peak. And there's a little bit of a downward slant there. We're still in orange, and we're at 12%. So we're hoping that has leveled off. Right now, if you go to our schools, 80% of our cases are with our students, 92% of those are unvaccinated. And a high case count along with the number of students create a significant workload for our schools and our school nurses. I'll tell you specifically, we've had to make some adjustment in regards to how we're tracing, contact tracing. Again, very fortunate that we have the minds that we have in FWCS. Jack Bird and his crew put together an app that is making it easier for us to track, easier for us to document and move documentation to our parents. However, we have moved that function to our administrators in our buildings because of the workload with our nurses. So the nurses' primary care is with, again, administering meds and so forth, and they literally were overwhelmed. So we've had to shift that, and I know, as I said at the very beginning, we are weary. So, but people continue to do the work, and we'll continue to do our work. Again, our goal is, how do we continue to move our students or retain our students in classrooms to minimize quarantining? And because we are, with the current masking, there are two primary areas where we're struggling. One is lunch. How do you keep the separation of 6 feet? Just doesn't work. Masks come off. When masks come off, you can no longer say we are fully masked. So therefore, lunch is an issue. Elementary, we've moved many of those into classrooms, so students are eating in classrooms, trying to maintain that cohort group. And actually, even in the high school and middle school, hey, how can we perhaps have students move outside, move into the open air where we no longer have the mask phenomenon, and quite frankly, eliminate them being in the same area greater than 15 minutes within 6 feet. So that's our guideline. Still trying to work through that. The other area is co-curricular, and it is what it is. So those are the two primary areas. I will say again, our principals are being very creative in what they're doing to modify the spacing, to accommodate for the nurses. And again, I cannot tell you how much we've appreciated the fact that we do have nurses in every one of our buildings. And that's because we're using those CARES dollars, and we'll continue to do so. Mary is not here, but last time she did speak, she mentioned a death rate or total death number. She said that was monthly. We have to retract that. That was incorrect. We do not have 30 deaths per month or 300 deaths overall across our entire country. Instead, total to date from May of 2020, there have been 444 total child deaths. So we did need to make that correction. On August 12th, it was actually 378 as total. Now, to where we are. This is an interesting chart, and you have two charts there. Those are our exact numbers that we're currently receiving. So, as I look here, and that's as of fully vaccinated, believing we are where we are today, and we'll continue to update these charts. If you see these charts and say, hey, we'd like some more information, let us know. But you can see 12th grade, we are seeing a greater percentage of 12th grade students who are vaccinated. We'd like to talk to, perhaps we could have some shots in our buildings like we had last spring. I think those numbers, we might see those increase ever more. And you can see as they are in earlier, younger grades, you'll see that percentage decrease. Overall, total secondary is about 26%. In regards to our cases, if I look at week 1, and again, I wanted that broken down with students and staff, so you see 2 columns there with a total. You're looking at students, and just look at those total as of today. 432 students and 105 staff for a total of 537. Quarantine numbers of over 3,600. Now, if you go back into the highest monthly case count in 2020-21 school year was last November, and our highest monthly case count was 380. So you can see the numbers. We're definitely seeing an increase in those numbers, and total cases for 2021 were 1,499, and we're already at 537. So when I say we're still in a pandemic and a crisis, we are still in a pandemic and crisis. So therefore, as we try to accommodate students who have been sent home. Our teachers are doing their best, and I still would like to say, please have patience and provide grace for all our workers, because everyone is literally at the edge. And I know that's the way for our parents too. That's why we're trying to do our best to keep students in school. So, some of the things that have happened in recently, changes in quarantine and COVID management. As you know, we no longer need to quarantine close contacts if masks are worn. That's on the buses and that's in the classroom. On buses and in classroom. We hope that tremendously decreases the number of quarantined students. So, we'll see what happens. We don't quite have the numbers on that to see what kind of decrease it's going to be, but again, it will be a decrease.
Is that in effect now?
It's in effect right now. So we started as of September 1st. With that, of course, we had Labor Day that kicked in, but we still had kids in quarantine, and we are now in full effect. Quarantine if you're wearing your mask. Now, we still have to do contact tracing. So say there's, Mark's in a classroom and he's positive, the administrators still have to go in that classroom to ensure that students were fully masked. If they were, no one's quarantined. Student goes home, that student then must stay home for 10 days or until they're tested on after the 7th day, may return on the 8th day. But that I can't tell you. I'm hoping the relief, we start to feel that relief. Both our parents, our students, as well as our staff in our buildings. So again, it remains extremely important to adhere to prevention strategies. Let me go to the next slide, sorry. So prevention strategies. Yes, if you are sick, please stay home. Stay home. Parents reporting COVID-like symptoms for their child will get an automated message reminding them of the rules for a safe return. We are having to automate because we can't keep up with the volume of messaging. So I know that's not what we want to do. That's not being, I will say, customer service oriented, but it's surely handling the masses of phone calls. Again, follow all isolation and quarantine rules, mask as much as possible while indoors, social distance at least 6 feet as much as possible when masks are off. Yes, frequent hand washing and sanitizer use, and then good cleaning routine. Those are our strategies that we're continuing to implement. And then, of course, the whole vaccination piece. And as you see there, approximately 33% of our high school students are now vaccinated, and 17% of our middle school. 6th graders are still at 1%. But I'll tell you, it seems as if we're moving in that direction. So some good things there. With that said, that's all I have in regards to our COVID report. Do you have any questions?
As we started the school year, you had a vaccination number for our students, and was it a single-digit number, like
yes,
4 or 5%?
You're exactly accurate. It's 4 or 5%. Tremendous jump.
We've seen a significant jump in the number of students who've now been vaccinated, at least have one shot.
At least have one shot.
That's
it's
impressive.
Significant jump.
Yeah.
And I think that's to the effect of how do we keep students in school, and parents are saying, especially high school parents, 12th graders, you see the highest, going down to the 9th grade and even down to 6th grade. The older the student, the more the vaccination, and quite frankly, I think parents are saying, this is my hunch, hey, this is senior year, we want you in school, let's try this, let's find the vaccination.
I appreciate the report, and I think a monthly would be good.
And like I said, if you see this chart, you want to say, hey, tweak this, let us know, and we'll tweak it. But we'll provide this for you on a monthly basis. Hopefully, knock on wood, we see that spike starting to go downward, and we go from orange to yellow to blue. I'd love to see, because I really also believe that what happened in June and July raised our hopes and expectations, and then we crashed and burned. So we're in that phase right now, and I just hope that continues to drive down. And then we'll evaluate the whole mass piece once we're in blue. That's our current thinking. But again, we're very fortunate. We are in constant contact with Dr. Sutter, with other school districts. What are we doing as entire Allen County? And I think our numbers, although large, if you look at per capita, we're probably doing, I don't even like to say better. We're not the numbers aren't as great as they might be in other places. So again, I think what our mitigation efforts are impacting in a positive way to the best of our ability. And we need to continue those until we see a significant decrease in cases. And I don't like to say a specific number or a specific color. I'll just say we will work with our medical experts. I have a PhD. I do not have an MD. And that's what we'll rely on. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Daniel. Okay, our next meeting is Monday, September 27th. So do we have a motion to adjourn this meeting? So moved. Except we want board comments first, don't we? So let's do that.
Oh, yeah, let's do
that first. Steve?
Sure.
I withdraw my second.
Well, we can vote after the comments. You can have to
I had a chance last Friday to be at Southside High School. Faye was there, Jack Bird, and a couple of other, Ramona Coma, I think, were there for the celebration of the 25th anniversary of Helen Brown Natatorium. I'll tell you what, I walked inside facility and it looked like it was brand new. In fact, the whole campus is just amazing. I mean, Southside will be 100 years old. I was not on the board when it was built, but I was there when we built the natatorium, and I had to remind the folks there that when we were building it, there was community outcry from a small minority that said what we were doing was grandiose, and it was more than what the community needed. Community didn't listen to that. We did get the money to construct that facility. And then, in fact, after we built it, the complaints I heard about it was that we built it too small. The capacity is 735 people. And I can tell you that on many a weekend when there are competitive events, that place is packed.
Yes, it is.
But it was a good time. And again, credit to Liz Kaywood for managing the place, and to Sodexo and their staff, because they've done one heck of a job in keeping that facility and all of the grounds in grade A shape. So, good time.
Thanks, Steve. Raleigh?
Like Steve mentioned, we are celebrating our 100th year as Southside alumni, and so to everybody watching and to the board members and everyone, keep an eye out on the events that we're having to celebrate that. We're looking forward to celebrating an event actually next week, so stay tuned for that. I just wanted to say that to the families and the community who watch the board meetings, if you're probably watching this meeting, I'm probably preaching to the choir, because you're already doing some of the work of really supporting the success of our students, and that's being informed. And that's a huge piece, staying involved, connecting with your teachers, communicating with them, and not just when things are going bad, supporting them and encouraging them and letting them know that you appreciate them. I think it's a huge piece for advocating for your students and just creating a better educational experience for you and your students. I mean, COVID is hard. Being a teacher is hard as it is, but COVID has thrown us a real curveball. So if you are one of those parents, or you one of those families, or one of those community members who are pretty involved, share information. Share the board meetings. share information that you know about different programs that are going on. We've talked about a few things that are really exciting with working with the 2 elementary schools and the 3DE and just some of the improvements that we're doing on the schools. Share that information with people that you know.
Great.
Thank you. Jennifer?
Parent engagement has always been one of my big platforms, so thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to touch on something Dr. Daniel said. I wanted to say thank you to all Fort Wayne Community Schools employees. That's from transportation to nutrition services, our aides, our assistants, our support staff of all, and especially our nurses. They didn't sign up to be members of the health department. They signed up to be school nurses, and insulin, boo-boos, Band-Aids and such, ice packs, and they are going above and beyond what we all could imagine as far as paperwork and calls and everything else. So I just really, if you see any of our workers anywhere, Sodexo, everyone, just a thank you would be very kind of you to reach out and let them know that we understand that on a daily basis they're pivoting for this pandemic. It's not going away, and they're making changes every single day, our teachers, everyone. So I just wanted to put forth a very big thank you. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out to the Snyder girls golf team and Coach Matson for placing second in the SAC conference this last weekend. 3 of our girls, of the 5 girls, placed in the top 10. And we honestly, Snyder had, Kylie Pyle was the medalist for the entire tournament from Snyder High School. So the last 2 years, I'm very proud to say that there was a Fort Wayne Community Schools medalist, and that's a pretty big thing for the girls golf. So congratulations to all those girls. All the teams are out, all the FWCS teams are out, and this coming weekend we're the first, golf is the first to head to sectionals. So that's this coming weekend. So if anybody's up near Zollner for the lake weekend or anything, come out to the golf course or head to, I think it's Timber Ridge for half of our conference. So kudos to all those girls, and go FWCS.
Thank you.
I just want to echo what Jennifer said. Just a big thank you to all of our staff members, even our staff members here at Grile. I know that you are all behind the scenes, but a lot of planning and pivoting has happened in this building and in all of our buildings. So when I hear Dr. Daniel say we're in crisis mode, it makes me sad because I know that our staff works hard every day when they're not in a crisis. So to add a crisis on top of it is just really overwhelming and exhausting. And still every day when I walk in Weiser Park, and I don't go in there every day, so I guess I shouldn't say every day, but anytime I go into Weiser Park, I'm greeted with smiles and hi, how are you? And the students look like they're thriving, and it's just business as usual as much as it can be, but I know that people are stressed out and they're just tired. And so I just, again, like Jennifer said, I just want to say thank you so much to all of our staff members. I really appreciate all the work that you do for our students and our community.
Thank you. Julie?
I agree with everyone, of course. I'm just really proud of our staff, all of them, for going above and beyond, not only last year, but this year. It's what's been, an extraordinary situation. But I also thought, when Dr. Daniel was given the COVID presentation, we've gotten some emails and maybe a couple comments about, well, how come your board isn't voting on whether to, have masks or not, or whether to do this or do that? And, we have voted. In fact, we voted twice. We voted once when we decided that we are not medical experts, we are not full-time employees, we don't have time to be in touch daily with our not only in-house health experts, but countywide and statewide health experts, so we voted by giving the superintendent the power to make those decisions, so that when needed, we can pivot on a daily, basis if needed. We also voted when we selected Dr. Daniel to be our superintendent. So, to me, that's just something that the board doesn't need to, that's not the type of decision we need to be involved in. We trust our superintendent, we trust our staff, and we support their decision. I mean, if you want to ask me how I vote, I tell you I would vote completely in agreement with Dr. Daniel and his staff have done. But it's just not necessary for us to do that.
Thank you for pointing that out, Julie. Appreciate it. Noah?
I'll try and keep it brief. I'll echo Maria and Jennifer in thanking everybody, staff, faculty, everybody involved at Fort Wayne Community Schools. I also want to echo Raleigh's point of parents continuing to get engaged. I'd be remiss not to thank the state and area legislators for their support, in our budget. I looked at the one number, we had 0.6% growth of revenue and funding over the last probably 8 years. And then this year, next year is about 5 to 6%. So we would be remiss not to thank our area legislators, so we thank them for that. But that being said, to Raleigh's point, I remember a movie called The Right Stuff that was back in the 80s about the moon landing. I've brought this up regular times. There's no bucks, there's no Buck Rogers. So there's no dollars, there's no space exploration and stuff. And so those bucks help facilitate our programs at schools, our education with the students, and all the supports that our system does as a whole. And so, parents, that's an important piece of your engagement, is understanding how things done at the state and local level impact your kids. And funding is a very important piece of that, and that comes up every year or two at the State House. So continue to encourage engagement and understanding of that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Noah. Dr. Daniel?
There's a group of people that go sometimes unheralded, and that would be our board. And I want to say to you, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for allowing us to do what we need to do on a daily basis and having trust and faith that we're going to do our very best. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And one way you can support our teachers, since this hasn't been the year that we thought it was going to be, is to get involved in Study Connection. Yes, another plug for Study Connection. I know we've been doing that a lot, but this one's more specific. I went to downtown Rotary today to talk about Study Connection and recruit volunteers, because Rotary has partnered with Washington School for, I believe they said 17 years now, and they do a Study Connection there with Washington. But anyone can volunteer at Washington. I'm not in Rotary, but I do volunteer at Washington Elementary. And, I've done Study Connection, I think, for 5 years now. And my first time when I met with my first student, when after the end of the session, she said, "Can you come back tomorrow?" And I knew that I was doing the right thing, being a volunteer for a student. But as a volunteer, when that child comes and gives you a big hug, or they draw a picture for you, or they are real excited about their library book and they want to read it to you right away, that makes volunteering really special. And one good thing about volunteering at Washington is, I know not all the schools have this, but you can get a sub if you can't make that day to volunteer. Okay. And you can also partner with somebody else, so you don't have to go every single day, but you can go, you can go every other day, or whatever fits your schedule with your partner. So if anybody's interested in volunteering for Study Connection, Washington could certainly use more volunteers. And you can fill out an application at studyconnection.org. So that's all I have. Thank you. And so we already have a motion and a second. So all in favor of adjourning? Aye. Aye. Thank you.